Welcome, fellow time travelers. Today we're diving headfirst into the lush jungles and tangled mysteries of the Maya civilization. Imagine a Netflix binge, but instead of plot twists about secret lovers or alien invasions, we've got ancient kings, cosmic calendars, and temples taller than your apartment block. Our journey will take us from the first humble huts hidden under rainforest canopies, all the way to towering pyramids that still make tourists' necks hurt from staring up. Along the way, we'll meet crafty farmers who grew maize before it was cool, priests who could predict eclipses without Google, and warriors who probably made Game of Thrones look like a pillow fight. But before we begin, smash that like button, drop a comment with your wildest theory about the Maya, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. This is history with a side of humor, a sprinkle of drama, and maybe a few sarcastic asides. Strap in. This is going to be a jungle ride through one of the most fascinating civilizations the world has ever seen. All right, before we go any further into this epic Maya adventure, let's grab a map, because yes, location matters. Picture Central America like a lush green belt, and smack in the middle of it, stretching across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, is the Maya world. We're talking dense jungles that hum with life, mountains that poke the clouds, rivers that sparkle when they're not busy flooding, and coastlines that could double as tropical postcards. The geography wasn't just scenic, it shaped everything. Trade routes twisted through mountains, temples rose above the canopy, and cities sprouted where fertile land met fresh water. Of course, all this variety came with challenges. Imagine trekking from a humid jungle straight into highland chill. Your hair wouldn't know what to do. Yet this diverse terrain gave the Maya access to everything from volcanic soil perfect for farming to coastal fish markets. So next time you hear Maya civilization, don't think of one spot. Think of a sprawling, vibrant network stitched together by jungle paths, rivers, and the occasional awkwardly steep staircase. Now that we've found the Maya on the map, let's roll back the clock to the pre-classic period, when the whole thing began. Picture tiny farming communities tucked between rivers and forest clearings, working the land like pros before the term agriculture even trended. Their greatest hits? Corn, squash, and beans, aka the Maya holy trinity of carbs. Forget fast food. Here it was, slow food, grown by hand, sun to plate. Families built simple thatched houses, and daily life was a mix of planting, harvesting, and avoiding the occasional jaguar who thought farm visit meant lunch. This wasn't yet a world of mighty kings or towering temples, more like tight-knit villages where everyone knew your name, your business, and probably how many ears of corn you harvested last season. But these humble beginnings were the soil, literally and figuratively, where one of the world's most sophisticated civilizations would grow. So while it might look simple from the outside, this was the first spark that would light the torch of Maya greatness. Before the Maya started carving their own grand story, there was another big player in the neighborhood, the Olmecs. Think of them as the cool, mysterious, older sibling of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs weren't just building giant stone heads for fun, though honestly, who wouldn't want one in their backyard? They were laying down the cultural blueprint. From art styles to religious concepts, they set trends the Maya would later remix into their own masterpiece. Picture Olmec priests teaching sacred rituals, artists crafting symbolic motifs, and architects experimenting with ceremonial platforms. The Maya didn't just copy, they took these ideas and turned them into something uniquely theirs, adding a few extra feathers, more intricate carvings, and an even stronger cosmic flair. It's like the Olmecs handed them a cultural starter pack, religion, architecture, and a dash of drama, and the Maya ran with it. Without the Olmecs paving the way, the Maya world might have looked very different, and maybe a lot less fabulous. The Maya didn't just inherit ideas from the Olmecs, they also had to strike a deal with Mother Nature. And she could be moody. On her good days, she offered rich volcanic soil, rivers full of fish, and forests overflowing with game. On her bad days, she flipped the dry season switch and turned vast fields into crackly, thirsty wastelands. Farming here was like dating someone unpredictable. You got lush, abundant harvests one year, and the next, You were begging the rain gods for just a sprinkle. This climate drama shaped everything. The crops they grew, the ceremonies they performed, even the locations they chose for their cities. Villages near rivers and lakes thrived during dry spells, while those too far away learned creative water storage, red, giant stone bathtubs. And when the sky finally opened, after months of stubborn sunshine, it was cause for a full-blown party. The environment wasn't just a backdrop, it was the stage manager, director, and occasional villain in the Maya story. If you think the Maya needed shiny metal tools to farm, think again. These folks were the MacGyvers of agriculture. Give them a stick, a stone, and some patience, and they'd turn a patch of jungle into a cornfield worthy of a food festival. Without iron or steel, they relied on sharpened obsidian blades, wooden digging sticks, and clever farming methods like raised fields and terracing. Imagine trying to chop roots with a rock and still ending up with perfectly tilled soil. Talk about commitment. They also practiced slash and burn farming, which sounds like a rock band name, but was actually a way to clear land and fertilize the soil at the same time. The result? Enough maize, beans, and squash to feed growing villages and keep everyone fueled for building temples, making art, and hosting the occasional rain dance party. In short, the Maya proved that you don't need fancy tools, just creativity, teamwork, and maybe a few calluses. Before the Maya built mighty cities, they started small, really small. Picture clusters of simple huts with palm-thatched roofs, arranged in cozy circles like the world's friendliest cul-de-sac. Smoke curled from cooking fires, kids chased each other between maize stalks, and every chicken in the village had a personal vendetta against anyone walking by. These early villages weren't just places to live. They were buzzing hubs of gossip, cooperation, and shared meals. Need help building your hut? Your neighbors were there. Forgot to plant beans? Someone would trade you some. And if a jaguar wandered too close, the whole village became a coordinated yelling squad. Without grand palaces or armies, community was their greatest strength. These tight bonds didn't just keep them safe and fed, they planted the seeds for the political and cultural networks that would later grow into the Maya civilization's powerful city-states. In short, the heart of the Maya Empire began not with stone and gold, but with friendship, teamwork, and the occasional chicken chase. As villages grew busier, some spots naturally became the place to be. Think of them as the ancient Maya version of a downtown hotspot. These early centers weren't just bigger villages. They were where trade, religion, and politics shook hands and occasionally argued. Farmers came to swap maize for pottery. Artisans displayed jade trinkets like limited edition merch, and priests held ceremonies that drew crowds bigger than a modern street festival. In between the bargaining and blessing, leaders emerged, people who could organize labor for building communal spaces, settle disputes, and probably gossip about neighboring villages. These hubs became magnets, attracting more residents, more trade, and more influence. Over time, the mix of economic clout, spiritual authority, and political power turned them into the seeds of full-fledged city-states. In short, what started as a marketplace with some ritual flair was quietly evolving into the nerve center of the future Maya civilization. As these bustling centers kept growing, the Maya faced a new challenge: organization. It's one thing to run a village where everyone knows everyone. It's another to manage a population big enough to argue about where the new ball court should go. The solution? Formal leadership, structured roles, and the beginnings of city-state politics. Leaders weren't just chiefs anymore. They became administrators, event planners for massive religious festivals, and occasionally referees in trade disputes. Priests took on a bigger role, scheduling rituals that aligned with the sacred calendar, while specialized workers handled construction, farming logistics, and record-keeping. Suddenly, society was running like a well-oiled or well-corn-fed machine. Rules and systems meant the city could coordinate food production, defense, and giant public works projects. What started as casual cooperation had turned into an organized hierarchy, laying the groundwork for the powerful Maya city-states that would dominate the region for centuries. From a few scattered huts to budding centers of trade, religion, and politics, The Maya had set the stage for something far greater. The question now was, how do you go from friendly neighborhood potlucks to an empire with towering pyramids and armies in fancy feathered armor? It wasn't going to happen overnight, and it definitely wasn't going to be easy. They would need stronger leadership, grander construction, and a whole lot of maize to keep the workforce happy. But looking at their progress so far, adapting to the land, innovating in farming, building tight-knit communities and creating hubs of power, it was clear they weren't just surviving. They were warming up for the big leagues. The tiny sparks of organization and culture were about to ignite into a blaze of civilization that would shine across Mesoamerica for centuries. And as we close this first chapter, we're left with a delicious suspense. Just how far could the Maya take this? Step into a Maya city, and the first thing that hits you isn't the humidity, it's the scale. Vast plazas stretch out like stone oceans, framed by towering temples that seem to poke the sky just to see if they can. These plazas weren't just pretty open spaces. They were the beating heart of politics, religion, and social life. Here, rulers addressed crowds with the kind of dramatic flair that would make modern politicians jealous. Priests performed rituals with enough incense to fumigate the entire neighborhood, and merchants set up stalls that turned the square into a buzzing marketplace. The architecture screamed ambition, pyramids for the gods, palaces for the elite, and massive staircases clearly designed to make visitors feel both impressed and slightly out of breath. Every stone was a statement. This was power you could see, touch, and trip over if you weren't careful. Welcome to the Maya City Center, part government HQ, part cathedral, part shopping mall, and 100% awe-inspiring. If the Maya world had a superstar city, Tikal would be strutting down the red carpet. Rising from the Guatemalan jungle like a stone skyscraper, its towering pyramids seemed determined to touch the clouds, or at least give them a high five. Tikal wasn't just big, it was powerful, with a history of alliances, betrayals, and wars long enough to fill its own soap opera. The Great Plaza buzzed with ceremonies, political announcements, and the occasional victory parade after crushing a rival. Its rulers, dressed in dazzling, feathered headdresses, weren't shy about flexing their influence, commissioning massive temples that doubled as status symbols and religious monuments. And those sky-high pyramids, perfect for impressing the gods, and making sure your enemies could see your power from miles away. With its blend of military muscle, religious prestige, and architectural bravado, Tikal was the kind of city that didn't just sit on the map, it owned it. If Tikal was the muscle of the Maya world, Palenque was the artist's soul. Nestled in the lush Chiapas jungle, Palenque didn't try to compete with the skyscraping pyramids. It played a different game, dazzling visitors with delicate beauty and jaw-dropping craftsmanship. Its temples and palaces were covered in intricate carvings that seemed to whisper ancient gossip about gods, kings, and the occasional underworld drama. At the heart of it all was King Pakal the Great, a ruler so legendary that his tomb inside the Temple of the Inscriptions is basically the Maya version of a VIP suite in the afterlife. The artistry here wasn't just decoration, it was storytelling in stone, with every glyph and sculpture carefully designed to impress both mortals and deities. Walking through Palenque was like flipping through the world's most luxurious, 1,000-year-old graphic novel, minus the Wi-Fi, but plus way more parrots. If the Maya cities were playing a cultural mixtape, Chichén Itzá would be the remix everyone talks about. By the post-classic period, it had become a bustling hub where ideas, goods and people from across Mesoamerica collided in one grand mashup. You could stroll past merchants selling turquoise from the north, hear tales from travelers who'd seen both coasts, and then watch a ritual that blended traditions from multiple cultures. And at the center of it all stood the iconic El Castillo Pyramid, an architectural show-off that doubled as a cosmic calendar. Twice a year during the equinox, the sunlight slithers down its steps in the form of a giant shadow serpent, probably making the god Kukulkan feel like the star of his own light show. Chichén Itzá wasn't just a city, it was a trade fair, religious stage, and tourist attraction rolled into one. If you wanted the full Maya meets the world experience, This was the place to be. If Chichén Itzá was the flashy showman, Copan was the master artisan, the kind of city that didn't just want to be remembered, but wanted to be remembered beautifully. Tucked away in the lush Honduran valley, Copan earned its crown as the artistic capital of the Maya world. Here, stone wasn't just building material, it was a canvas. The city's stelae, towering stone monuments, were carved with such exquisite detail that you half expect them to blink at you. And then there's the famous hieroglyphic stairway, 63 steps covered in over 2,000 glyphs, like the world's most ancient and dramatic comic strip. Rulers here seemed determined to immortalize themselves in style, commissioning portraits that made them look taller, stronger, and naturally more divine. Walking through Copan was like entering a museum where every wall, floor, and staircase had something to say. And what it said was, "We're the Maya, and we do art better than anyone." If you thought Maya cities were just pyramids and temples, think again. These places were urban masterpieces, planned with the precision of a modern city architect, minus the traffic jams and questionable zoning laws. At the center stood towering temples and royal palaces, where political deals and divine rituals happened side by side. Just a short walk away, the ball courts where athletes played a deadly serious game that was equal parts sport, ceremony, and oops, the loser might get sacrificed. Residential areas sprawled beyond, with neatly arranged homes for nobles and humbler dwellings for common folk, all connected by a network of stone-paved roads. Markets buzzed with trade, while reservoirs and causeways kept the city alive and hydrated. Everything was linked in a grand urban web that made you wonder, did the Maya invent city planning before it was cool? Whether you were a king, a priest, or a corn farmer, the city's layout was your daily stage, blending practicality with grandeur in a way that still makes urban designers drool. Life in a Maya city was like a never-ending stage play, and everyone had a role. The nobles, think of them as the lead actors, strutting around in feathered headdresses and embroidered cloaks, making political decisions with the seriousness of someone picking a Netflix show. The priests were the mystical directors, reading omens, scheduling ceremonies, and making sure the gods stayed entertained. Merchants bustled through the streets like delivery drivers on a holiday rush, hauling cacao beans, jade, and exotic feathers. Artisans were the creative crew, chiseling stone, painting murals, and weaving textiles that could make Fashion Week jealous. And then there were the farmers, the unsung heroes, who kept the entire city fed while rarely getting a spot in the credits. From sunrise drum beats to sunset chants, the city thrummed with activity. Whether you were negotiating trade, crafting a masterpiece, or planting maize, your role kept the grand production of the city rolling without a missed cue. If the Maya city was a grand theater, the central market was the daily blockbuster everyone attended. From sunrise, the place burst into life, merchants shouting special offers in a mix of Maya and hand gestures, the smell of roasted cacao mingling with freshly ground maize, and the clinking of jade beads being bartered like they were the latest currency. Stalls overflowed with colorful textiles, salted fish, exotic bird feathers, and baskets of chili peppers ready to set your mouth on fire. Nobles strolled through, pretending not to haggle, but secretly doing it anyway, while farmers swapped their surplus corn for salt or obsidian blades. Children darted between stalls, half playing, half stealing snacks when no one looked. Somewhere, a traveling storyteller drew a crowd with tales of gods and heroes, probably exaggerated for tips. In this buzzing square, you could trade a cacao bean for a drink, your dignity for a better deal, or simply soak in the chaos that kept the city's heart pumping. Beyond the bustling markets, the Maya world thrived on an impressive trade network that would make modern delivery apps jealous. Goods traveled by foot along jungle paths or by sleek canoes gliding down winding rivers. Picture porters carrying heavy bundles of cacao, obsidian, salt, and jade across miles of dense forest. No GPS, just memory and maybe a few helpful parrots squawking directions. On the waterways, traders paddled under the tropical sun, their canoes loaded so high with goods you'd think they were moving entire shops. Along the way, they stopped at small villages, swapping news and gossip along with goods. It wasn't just about material exchange. It was the ancient equivalent of social media, connecting distant cities like Tikal, Chichén Itzá, and Copan in a web of relationships. And like any network, it had its premium members, elite merchants with better routes, better deals, and probably better shoes. This constant flow of trade kept the cities stocked, the nobles happy, and the Maya world more interconnected than you might expect from a civilization without Wi-Fi. As the bustling heartbeat of the Maya world fades into the horizon, one truth remains. Cities were more than just stone and sweat. They were the ultimate mashup of politics, religion, gossip, and cacao-fueled trade deals. Here, priests climbed temple stairs not just to chat with the gods, but to keep an eye on who was trading jade behind their backs. Nobles strutted through grand plazas like runway models, while merchants carried exotic goods from far-off lands, each bargaining session doubling as a theatrical performance. From the echoing ball courts to the smoky kitchens, every corner of the city pulsed with stories. And when night fell, the same plazas that rang with market chatter transformed into stages for rituals under starlit skies. These cities were living, breathing networks, woven from faith, ambition, and the shared understanding that if the cacao ran out, so would the peace. In the grand narrative of the Maya, the city wasn't just a backdrop, it was the main character, wearing a feathered headdress and demanding the spotlight. For the Maya, time wasn't some endless river you drifted down. It was a giant cosmic Ferris wheel, spinning past, present, and future in an eternal loop. Picture it. While the rest of the world stressed over clocks and deadlines, the Maya looked at the sky and thought, relax, it'll all come back around. In their view, every moment was part of a cycle. Good harvests, bad harvests, wars, weddings, all spinning back like your favorite playlist on repeat. This wasn't just philosophy, it was a way of living. They built calendars that didn't just count days, but predicted patterns, tying human destiny to cosmic rhythms. And unlike our modern obsession with time as money, theirs was more like time as a story, sometimes dramatic, sometimes hilarious, but always worth rereading. To them, understanding time meant you could sync your life with the universe itself, whether that meant planting corn on the perfect day or avoiding a cosmically bad hair day. It's no wonder they treated timekeepers like rock stars because, in the Maya world, knowing when was just as important as knowing what. If you asked the Maya about time, they'd tell you it's more like your favorite TV series than a straight line, full of reruns, plot twists, and the occasional déjà vu episode. For them, events didn't just happen once, they came back around, wearing a different outfit but the same face. A drought this year? Don't worry, one's coming again in a few decades, just like that cousin who always shows up uninvited. This idea of cyclical time meant that history was a chain of repeating patterns, not a road heading somewhere new. The Maya saw wars, harvests, and celestial events as part of a cosmic schedule, where every entry had a "see you later" instead of a goodbye. It gave them both comfort and caution. Comfort in knowing bad times wouldn't last forever, and caution in knowing the good times wouldn't either. And while modern folks stare at digital clocks that scream, "You're late," the Maya simply glanced at the sky, nodded, and thought, "Ah, here we go again." If the Maya had a favorite calendar, it would be the Tzolk'in, 260 days of pure cosmic scheduling magic. Forget January to December. This one was built for rituals, prophecies, and picking the perfect day to get married, or start a war, depending on your vibe. The Tzolk'in was like the ultimate celestial event planner, matching each day with a unique combination of numbers and sacred day names. Priests used it to predict the fate of newborns, decide when to plant corn, and occasionally determine whether today was a good day to avoid leaving the house altogether. Picture an ancient Maya family consulting their local priest. Is today a lucky day? The priest squints at the calendar, strokes his chin, and replies, "Only if you're planning to make tamales." It wasn't just about dates, it was about aligning life with the heartbeat of the universe, a reminder that every day carried its own energy. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was still figuring out how many months there should be in a year. If the Tzolk'in was the Maya's mystical ritual calendar, The Hob was its more practical, don't forget to pay the electric bill cousin. The Hob ran on a 365-day cycle, 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 bonus days known as Wyeb, which were basically the cosmic equivalent of Friday the 13th times 5. During Wyeb, people avoided traveling, starting new projects, or even leaving the house unless absolutely necessary. Think of it as a 5-day just stay inside and binge carve stone festival. Each month had its own name and personality, from harvest times to rain season prep. The Hob kept the Maya's agriculture on track, telling farmers when to plant, harvest, or brace for the weather's bad mood swings. But it wasn't just about crops. It connected daily life to the larger rhythm of the sun, ensuring that ceremonies, markets, and politics stayed in sync with the universe's schedule. While the rest of the world debated whether February should have 28 or 29 days, the Maya had already perfected their sunny side-up calendar centuries earlier. We've met the daily rhythm of Tzolk'in and the sun-synced Hob. Time to zoom out. The long count, the Maya's deep time odometer, built to track history across centuries. Imagine dates as a 5-slot combo: Baktun.Katun.Tun, Uinal.Kin, where a kin is a day, 20 kin make a Uinal, 18 Uinal make a ton, 360 days because neat math, 20 tun a Katun, and 20 Katun a Baktun. With that stack, you can pin a royal coronation or a solar eclipse with precision that makes modern planners blush. Scribes carved these numbers on stele like stone tweets. Permanent, public, and absolutely impossible to edit. The real flex? A symbol for zero, the elegant shell glyph, letting them write dates cleanly and compute like pros. Priests and astronomer mathematicians used the long count to anchor myths to moments, schedule ceremonies, and quietly brag that, yes, they could count very, very far. If Tzolk'in sets the vibe and Hob keeps the chores, the long count tells the grand saga, placing you not just in a week or a season, but in a cosmic chapter. And no, the close of a chapter isn't the end of everything. We'll save that dramatic misunderstanding for later. We've met the daily vibes, Tzolk'in, and the sunny schedule, Hob. Now watch the magic trick when they click together like two cosmic gears. Because 260 doesn't divide evenly into 365, the same pair of Tzolk'in day name and Hob month date won't line up again until 18,980 days later, roughly 52 solar years. Boom, the calendar round. It's like the universe saying, see you at the same time slot in half a century. For the Maya, that combo gave each date a unique flavor and made it easy to tag events within a lifetime without hauling out the heavyweight long count. Imagine a birthday that returns with the exact sacred day plus month date pairing only once or twice in your life. Instant excuse for a mega party. Administrators loved it. Markets, rituals, and civic projects could be planned to hit the perfect repeat. Priests loved it even more. The alignment felt like a drumbeat in the sky that told them when to turn up the incense and the drama. And for everyday folks, it was a reminder that life moves in elegant loops. Today's pattern will come back around, but not so soon that you can't enjoy the surprise. Keep that in mind as we pivot from calendars to crops. Timing isn't everything, but it's close. For the Maya, farming wasn't just about tossing seeds in the dirt and hoping for rain. It was a carefully timed dance with the cosmos. Their calendars weren't sitting pretty on the wall. They were the ultimate agricultural playbook. Tzolk'in told them the spiritually favorable days, while Hob kept track of the solar year, ensuring corn was planted before the heavens decided to unleash a season-long prank. Picture a Maya farmer, brow furrowed, consulting a beaded calendar like a modern gamer checking patch notes. Ah yes, today is good for maize, bad for beans. The timing was everything. Plant too early, and the rains might ghost you. Plant too late, and your crops could be toast. Even festivals were synced to the planting and harvest cycles, turning agriculture into a full-blown community event. Imagine ending harvest season with not just a feast, but also a mini music festival where the headliner is corn. In a world without weather apps, the Maya mastered nature's schedule, making sure their people were fed, their gods were happy, and their dinner plates were never just sad, empty pottery. In the grand theater of Maya society, the astrologers were the VIPs, the very important prophets. These weren't your casual stargazers. They were mathematicians, priests, and fortune tellers rolled into one, armed with obsidian tools and an intimidating poker face. People came to them for everything, from picking a wedding date to deciding when to start a war. Imagine a villager nervously asking, "Is today good for planting corn?" And the astrologer, after an intense calculation session, replying, "Only if you wear your lucky feathers." Their job wasn't just about reading the sky. It was about interpreting the sacred calendars, predicting eclipses, and advising kings with the gravitas of someone who could literally blame bad harvests on Saturn. But being revered also meant being feared. Make a wrong prediction, and the same people praising you yesterday might eye you like a suspicious turkey at a feast. Still, their influence shaped the rhythm of life, turning cosmic alignments into the blueprint for politics, farming, and even gossip-worthy ceremonies. The infamous 2012 prophecy, the day the internet collectively decided the Maya had predicted the apocalypse. In reality, it was just the end of a long count cycle, like flipping your calendar from December to January, except their December lasted 5,125 years. Imagine the Maya scribes watching modern people panic and thinking, "We just ran out of stone space, calm down." The long count reset was more like a cosmic New Year's Eve. Time for renewal, not doom. Of course, Hollywood and conspiracy theorists couldn't resist turning it into a doomsday blockbuster. People stockpiled canned beans, built underground bunkers, and some even booked expensive survival tours in the Yucatan. Meanwhile, actual Maya communities were rolling their eyes, holding cultural celebrations, and welcoming the new cycle with dance and offerings. The joke's on us. While the rest of the world was bracing for meteor showers and zombie invasions, the Maya were throwing a calendar party. So, after decoding the cosmic clockwork and surviving the whole 2012 panic, what's the takeaway? For the Maya, time wasn't just something you checked on your phone. It was the heartbeat of the universe. Understanding it meant aligning your life with the cycles of the sun, the moon, and even Venus. Planting crops, holding festivals, making big life decisions, it all followed the rhythm of the calendars. Missing the right date wasn't just inconvenient. It was like showing up to a wedding a year late. They believed harmony with time kept both your cornfields and your soul in good shape. And maybe that's the bit we've lost. Our calendars now scream with deadlines and sales, not with moon phases or sacred days. The Maya's message is clear. Time isn't your enemy chasing you, it's your dance partner. And if you learn the steps, life feels a lot less like a race and more like a well-choreographed celebration. So, maybe instead of dreading the next Monday, we should ask ourselves, are we dancing to the right beat? Imagine a universe where your weather app isn't on your phone. It's in the hands of 100 gods who all have strong opinions. Welcome to the Maya mythological cosmos, a multi-layered reality where deities run the show. One controls the rain, another the sun, another your corn crop. And yes, someone's in charge of death too. It's like the ultimate group project, except everyone is immortal and has magical powers. The Maya believed the world was divided into layers: the heavens above, the earthly realm, and the mysterious underworld, Xibalba. Every event, from a bountiful harvest to a sudden thunderstorm, was a direct message from these divine managers. If things went wrong, you didn't file a complaint. You organized a ceremony, offered gifts, and maybe even danced in a feathered costume. For the Maya, this wasn't superstition. It was the operating system of life, the way to stay in sync with forces that made the world tick. And just like in any workplace, keeping the bosses happy was key. The only difference? Here, the bosses could literally throw lightning at you if they weren't pleased. If the Maya pantheon had a CEO, it would be Itzamna. Think of him as the ultimate multitasker, creator of the world, inventor of writing, founder of religion, and, because that wasn't enough, master of magic. He's the kind of god who probably answers his own emails, carves a new glyph before breakfast, and still has time to bless your crops. Often depicted as an old man with a wise face, he wasn't just about looking important, he was the cosmic architect, setting the rules for how the heavens, earth, and underworld should run. Under his watch, humans learned how to write, record history, and communicate with the gods through ritual. Without him, Maya scribes might have been stuck doodling in the dirt forever. He also had a softer side: healer, protector of knowledge, and occasional life coach for kings. The people didn't just worship him, they relied on his guidance for everything from farming schedules to royal ceremonies. Basically, Itzamna wasn't just a god. He was the operating manual of the Maya universe, written in divine ink. If Itzamna was the wise old CEO, Kukulkan was the company's rock star brand ambassador, a giant feathered serpent with the charisma of a celebrity and the gravitas of a god. Known as the feathered serpent, he slithered between heaven and earth, literally connecting the two realms like a divine Wi-Fi signal. Kukulkan represented wisdom, power, and unity, and his image was carved into temples so spectacular they still draw crowds today. The most famous, Chichén Itzá's pyramid, where during the equinox sunlight creates the illusion of him descending the steps. Basically, the Maya's version of a blockbuster light show. Priests and kings looked to him for guidance in war, diplomacy, and farming, believing his blessings could tip the balance between feast and famine. He wasn't just feared, he was adored. Proof that in Maya culture, even a massive snake could be a style icon. With feathers shimmering like a tropical sunset and the presence of a cosmic guardian, Kukulkan wasn't just a god. He was the living link between the divine and the mortal, reminding everyone that true power comes with a dazzling entrance. If Kukulkan was the flashy headliner, then Chak was the backstage crew making sure the show could even happen. Known as the god of rain, Chak was the ultimate VIP in Maya agriculture, because without him, the corn sulked, the beans pouted, and the squash went on strike. He was often depicted with a long, curling nose and eyes like storm clouds ready to burst. When rain didn't come, the Maya didn't just complain about the weather. They threw full-on ceremonies complete with dancing, chanting, and offerings to get Chak's attention. And by offerings, we mean everything from food and jade to, occasionally, more dramatic sacrifices. His job description was simple yet terrifying: control the rain, keep the people fed, and don't let the rivers turn into sad, cracked puddles. Temples dedicated to Chak were often built with water features, just to remind him of his responsibilities. In the Maya world, Chak wasn't just weather. He was the difference between a thriving harvest and an awkward famine. And if you saw storm clouds rolling in, you knew Chak was clocking in for his shift, complete with thunder as his opening act. If Chak was the rainmaker, then the sun, moon, maize, and death gods were the ultimate supporting cast in the Maya cosmic drama. The sun god, all golden and smug, strutted across the sky daily like he owned the place. The moon goddess, softer but no less powerful, ruled the night with a silver glow that could make poets swoon or farmers panic during eclipses. The maize god, pure celebrity status. Without him, no tortillas, no tamales, no joy. He was often depicted as a handsome young man with a head shaped like an ear of corn. Yes, agricultural beauty standards were different back then. And then there was the death god, who showed up like the party crasher no one wanted but everyone eventually had to meet. Together they kept the Maya world spinning, each with their own fan club, temples, and drama. One day you'd be thanking the sun for a bountiful harvest. The next you'd be begging the moon for rain. And all the while hoping the death god wasn't penciling you into his calendar. It was like living in a divine soap opera, minus the commercial breaks. Forget the Super Bowl. Pak to Pak was the real high-stakes ballgame. Picture this: two teams, no hands allowed, bouncing a solid rubber ball, basically a medieval bowling ball, off their hips, thighs, and chests, aiming to get it through a tiny stone hoop high on the court wall. Easy? Not when the hoop is the size of your head and 8 feet up. The crowd roared, drums pounded, and incense filled the air, as every bounce carried spiritual meaning. This wasn't just sport, it was a cosmic replay of myth, a battle between day and night, life and death. The kicker? Winning didn't always mean celebration. Sometimes it meant being offered to the gods in a "thank you for playing" sacrifice. And losing, well, depending on the occasion, that could be just as deadly. Players trained for years wearing ornate belts, feathered headdresses, and enough leather padding to survive a small earthquake. Imagine trying to keep a straight face when you realize your weekend match could determine the fate of the crops. For the Maya, Pak wasn't just about scoring points. It was about keeping the universe in balance, one bruised hip at a time. If you thought Pak was intense, wait until you hear about Maya sacrifices. These weren't random acts of cruelty. They were VIP backstage passes to the gods. The most prestigious offering? Royal blood. Kings and queens would pierce their tongues, ears, or even more. Delicate areas, letting the blood drip onto sacred paper, which was then burned so the smoke could carry prayers skyward. Animals, especially jaguars and birds, were also on the guest list for the afterlife courier service. And yes, human sacrifices happened. Sometimes prisoners of war, sometimes unlucky ball game champions. Talk about a bad trophy. The rituals were public spectacles, incense swirling, drums pounding, and crowds holding their breath. Priests dressed in elaborate feathered robes and jade jewelry performed the ceremonies with the precision of a Broadway production, only with more obsidian knives. For the Maya, sacrifice wasn't just about death. It was about renewal. Feeding the cosmic cycle so the sun would rise, the rains would fall, and corn would grow. In their eyes, every drop of blood was a deposit into the universe's bank account. And if the gods were pleased, the returns were priceless. If the Maya gods were the VIPs of the spiritual world, then the high priests were the ultimate event planners, and bodyguards rolled into one. These weren't your average robe-wearing holy men. They were the bridge between the human and divine realms, armed with rituals, prophecies, and a killer sense for dramatic timing. High priests decided when to plant corn, when to declare war, and when to throw a blood-soaked festival so grand it made everyone forget about last year's drought. They wore towering feathered headdresses, dripping jade jewelry, and face paint so intimidating it could make even Chak think twice before skipping a rain delivery. Their job required encyclopedic knowledge of astronomy, mythology, medicine, and crowd control. One wrong reading of the stars and boom, panic in the plaza. But when they got it right, the people cheered, the gods were pleased, and the priest's reputation soared higher than Kukulkan's feathers. They weren't just leaders, they were influencers before hashtags, commanding respect with every chant and obsidian flourish. In the Grand Library of Maya mythology, the Popol Vuh is basically the ultimate adventure novel, only with more decapitations and trips to the underworld. At its heart are the twin heroes, Hunahpu and Ixbalanca, whose job description could be summed up as professional troublemakers for evil gods. Their biggest gig, taking on the lords of Xibalba, the Maya underworld, a place with more deadly traps than an Indiana Jones movie marathon. The twins outsmarted death with clever tricks. Think ball games that double as gladiator matches, riddles that could fry your brain, and the occasional dramatic resurrection. They were witty, resourceful, and annoyingly good at making their enemies look like amateurs. Every challenge was a mix of danger and slapstick. One moment they're dodging razor-sharp blades, the next they're roasting their foes with sarcasm. For the Maya, this wasn't just entertainment. It was a lesson in bravery, cleverness, and the idea that sometimes you've got to play the long game with the gods themselves. After gods, ball games, sacrifices, and heroic underworld road trips, what's left? The heart of it all, belief. For the Maya, mythology wasn't just a bedtime story. It was the glue holding society together, like cosmic duct tape. Festivals were more than parties. They were social contracts with the divine. The rain didn't just fall, it was negotiated with Chak. Crops didn't just grow, they were blessed by the gods of maize. Even politics had a heavenly stamp of approval. Kings ruled not just with armies, but with rituals that proved they had the gods on speed dial. These shared beliefs gave everyone a role. Whether you were a farmer planting corn, a priest performing rituals, or a kid watching in awe as feathers and incense filled the air. Sure, some customs might make modern folks raise an eyebrow, bloodletting as a community event, anyone? But they kept people united, purposeful, and in sync with the seasons. For the Maya, Faith wasn't about waiting for miracles. It was about participating in the grand cosmic performance, making sure every drumbeat, prayer, and myth kept their world turning. If you think the Maya were just about pyramids and rituals, think again. They were basically the science geeks of the ancient world. Their writing system wasn't random doodles on stone. It was an 800-character masterpiece that could record everything from royal gossip to the exact date of the next eclipse. Their math, a base 20 system so clever it makes modern calculators jealous, complete with an early version of zero. Yes, centuries before Europe caught on. And astronomy? Let's just say, if NASA had existed back then, the Maya would have been the ones running it. They tracked the sun, moon, and planets with pinpoint accuracy, predicting eclipses like it was just another Tuesday. What's wild is how they blended it all together. Writing, numbers, and sky watching weren't separate subjects. They were part of one big cosmic toolkit. Building a temple? Better align it with the solstice. Planning a festival? Check the star charts. For the Maya, science wasn't locked in a scroll. It was woven into everyday life, turning their cities into open-air laboratories where the universe itself was the textbook. Forget the alphabet song. If you were Maya, learning to write meant mastering over 800 intricate hieroglyphs. This wasn't just squiggles on stone. Each symbol was a work of art, blending pictures and syllables into a language that could record everything from epic battles to royal love affairs, and probably some ancient sarcasm. Imagine a mix of emojis, comic strips, and Shakespeare rolled into one. The glyphs could be read in multiple directions, horizontal, vertical, or even in artistic spirals, turning reading into a puzzle as much as a skill. Scribes were the rock stars of their day, trained for years to perfectly carve or paint each glyph onto stone, pottery, or folded bark paper codices. And this wasn't just for the nobles. Rituals, trade records, astronomical observations, and even myths were preserved in this elegant visual code. The result? A civilization with a memory sharper than a gossip columnist and prettier than any font you've downloaded. Their writing wasn't just communication. It was a living gallery of culture, history, and wit, etched for eternity. For centuries, the Maya script was like an ancient locked diary, gorgeous to look at, impossible to read. Early explorers guessed wildly. Some thought the glyphs were just fancy art. Others claimed they were mystical symbols with no real meaning. Spoiler, both guesses were wrong. The truth began to unravel in the 20th century when a mix of stubborn linguists, daring archaeologists, and one or two eccentric geniuses started cracking the code. They discovered that the writing was a blend of logograms, whole words, and syllabic signs, basically the Maya version of mixing emojis with phonetics. The breakthrough came when scholars realized the glyphs recorded not just grand royal events, but also everyday moments, like births, marriages, and possibly a note about someone being late to a ritual. It was like finding the civilization's social media feed, preserved in stone and bark paper codices. Today, thanks to decades of work, we can finally read those voices from the past, and the Maya are speaking again, though without hashtags, unfortunately. Forget the number 10 system you use every day. The Maya looked at their fingers and toes and thought, why stop at 10? Welcome to base 20 math, where counting didn't just stop at your hands, it included your feet too. And if that wasn't enough, they casually invented the concept of 0 centuries before much of the world even thought about it. While Roman numerals were still making subtraction feel like medieval torture, the Maya were performing calculations that could track lunar cycles and plan massive temple constructions. Their symbols for numbers were elegant yet practical. Dots for ones, bars for fives, and a shell-shaped glyph for 0. A symbol as revolutionary as the invention of sliced bread, but less edible. This wasn't just math for math's sake. It was a cosmic calculator that tied directly into their calendars, agriculture, and religious ceremonies. So the next time you think math is boring, remember, somewhere in the jungle, a Maya priest was probably using base 20 to figure out when to throw the next big party for the gods. For the Maya, math wasn't just about solving problems, it was about building entire worlds. Need a pyramid? They could calculate the exact slope so it lined up with the solstice sunrise. Planning a city plaza? They measured every angle so the shadows danced perfectly during a festival. Even religious ceremonies got the math treatment. Priests scheduled them down to the precise lunar phase. Because who wants to anger a god with bad timing? Using their base 20 system, ingenious for geometry, the Maya could measure distances without laser tools and align structures without GPS. Just eyes, ropes, and maybe a little divine inspiration. Their measuring ropes were like the medieval version of a tape measure, except it could decide where your afterlife party was held. In short, math was the secret ingredient in everything, from stacking giant stones without cranes to making sure the temple steps doubled as a giant calendar. So while the rest of the ancient world was eyeballing it, the Maya were running a mathematical symphony that made their cities and their gods very happy. The Maya didn't just look at the stars. They turned the night sky into their personal calendar app, centuries before smartphones. With nothing more than sharp eyes, steady patience, and a knack for patterns, they could predict solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, and even the movements of planets like Venus with shocking accuracy. Imagine a group of astronomer priests wrapped in feathered robes, lying on temple rooftops and staring at the heavens all night. Not because they were romantics, but because they had to tell the king whether next week's festival would happen under a smiling sun or a dramatic blackout. Their observations weren't just for show. Farmers timed planting seasons, warriors planned campaigns, and priests scheduled rituals based on celestial movements. And while other civilizations occasionally panicked at sudden dark skies, the Maya were the calm ones in the corner, sipping their cacao, saying, "Relax, we saw this coming 3 years ago." In their world, astronomy wasn't a luxury. It was a survival tool, a political strategy, and a spiritual compass, all rolled into one glittering map of the cosmos. If stargazing was the Maya's science, then the observatories at Uxmal and Chichén Itzá were their ultimate laboratories. These weren't just random stone towers. They were precision-engineered cosmic instruments disguised as jaw-dropping architecture. The round caracol at Chichén Itzá, for example, wasn't built because someone liked circles. It aligned perfectly with Venus's rising points. Imagine a Maya architect saying, "Yes, the view is nice, but does it sync with the planet?" Meanwhile, at Uxmal, the governor's palace stretched across the horizon with doorways that framed the sun during solstices, like nature's own IMAX. Priests and astronomers worked side by side, peering through narrow slits in the walls to mark celestial events, while farmers and warriors waited for the official sky report before planting crops or planning battles. The blend of function and beauty was no accident. These structures were temples, timekeepers, and cosmic calculators all in one. In short, the Maya built observatories so stunning you could get lost in the view, but they'd remind you the real show was happening in the sky. For the Maya, gazing at the night sky was never just science. It was a cosmic customer service call to the gods. Picture a high priest decked out in elaborate feathered headdress and jaguar pelts, squinting through the darkness at Venus, then nodding as if the planet just confirmed his dinner reservation. Every eclipse, every comet, every suspiciously bright star wasn't just logged in their astronomical records. It was a divine memo from above. Temples doubled as observatories, and rituals were perfectly timed to celestial events, ensuring both agricultural success and a satisfied pantheon. If the maize harvest was good, thank the gods. If it failed, clearly someone skipped their full moon dance offering. This fusion of science and faith meant that a chart of planetary cycles could sit right next to a schedule for bloodletting ceremonies. To the Maya, mathematics and astronomy weren't cold, sterile pursuits. They were tools for cosmic diplomacy. And in a way, that makes sense. Why only predict the future when you can also bribe it with incense, chants, and the occasional dramatic sacrifice? The Maya didn't just write history. They engraved it, painted it, and baked it right into the fabric of daily life. Imagine a scribe hunched over a slab of limestone, chipping away a royal decree while his buddy is nearby painting the same event on a ceramic vase, like ancient Instagram posts, but in stone and clay. Bark paper codices, folded like accordions, recorded everything from star charts to corn tax ledgers. And while most civilizations worried about keeping scrolls in a dry place, The Maya made sure their records could survive centuries of jungle humidity. Every carving, every painted glyph was a blend of art, science, and a little political PR. A king's battle victory, immortalized on a temple wall, an important celestial alignment, etched into a stela for generations to admire. Even mundane things like crop schedules or festival dates were given the VIP treatment in stone. These records weren't just data, they were cultural time capsules, each one shouting, "We were here and we were awesome." And thanks to their durability, those messages are still being read today, long after the last Maya scribe laid down his chisel. For the Maya, knowledge was never just something to store in dusty corners of the mind. It was the golden bridge between humanity and the cosmos. After all the chiseling, painting, counting, and stargazing, what remained was not just data, but a way of life. Imagine a Maya elder addressing a young apprentice. These numbers aren't just for building temples. They tell us when to plant corn and when the gods want to party. Astronomy guided the calendar. Mathematics kept architecture flawless. And writing made sure future generations wouldn't forget who figured it all out first. Science was wrapped in ritual, and ritual was infused with science, so that every calculation felt like a prayer and every glyph felt like a blessing. The Maya didn't see a divide between the rational and the spiritual. They saw them as dance partners moving in perfect sync under the stars. And perhaps that's why their legacy still captivates us. They understood that the quest for knowledge is really a quest to find our place in the great swirling story of the universe. How on earth did the Maya, armed with nothing but stone tools and human muscle, manage to build structures that still make modern architects scratch their heads? Picture this. No steel cranes, no trucks, not even a humble donkey for hauling. Just sheer determination, clever engineering, and probably a lot of very sore backs. Towering pyramids, sprawling temples, and massive plazas rose from the jungle floor as if they had sprouted there overnight. Workers carved limestone with precision, fitting each block so snugly that not even a tortilla could slide in between. The scale was staggering. Some temples were as tall as a 20-story building. Yet they were aligned so perfectly with celestial events that they doubled as giant astronomical calendars. Tourists today marvel and ask, how did they do it? The Maya might answer with a smirk. Patience, teamwork, and knowing exactly when to take a break for cacao. These feats weren't just about construction. They were about proving that with enough brains, brawn, and maybe a few rituals to keep the gods on your side, nothing was truly impossible. When it came to building, the Maya's shopping list was surprisingly short. Limestone, sandstone, and wood. No steel beams, no concrete mixers, just nature's own supplies and a lot of clever know-how. Limestone was their superstar, soft enough to carve when freshly quarried, but hard as a politician's promise once it dried. Sandstone played backup in places where limestone wasn't available, and wood was the Swiss Army knife of their toolkit, used for scaffolding, tools, and even as rollers in transport. Picture a Maya mason examining a block of limestone like a jeweler inspecting a diamond, deciding exactly how it would fit into the grand design. They didn't just stack stones. They shaped them with such precision that the building still stands centuries later, even after being smacked around by earthquakes, storms, and the occasional over-enthusiastic archaeologist. This mastery of materials proved that you don't need futuristic tech to build something that lasts. You just need the right rock, the right hands, and maybe a strong back willing to lift it all day. Moving tons of stone without wheels or animals? For the Maya, that was just another Tuesday. Their secret weapons, sloped ramps, wooden rollers, and an army of determined workers who probably had the strongest legs in Mesoamerica. Picture teams of laborers hauling limestone blocks up long earthen ramps, chanting in rhythm to keep pace. Part workout, part construction site. Wooden rollers helped move heavy stones across flat ground, though lifting them into place still relied on sheer muscle and clever leverage tricks. Supervisors kept a close eye, making sure no one decided to accidentally roll a block downhill for fun. Sometimes entire communities pitched in, turning construction into a social event. Half work, half festival, with food, music, and the occasional dramatic argument over whose ramp design was better. By combining practical physics with endless human determination, the Maya managed to move mountains, well, small chunks of them, right into the heart of their cities. For the Maya, building a temple wasn't just about stacking stones, it was about syncing with the universe itself. These master builders didn't pick a random spot for their creations. They aligned them with pinpoint accuracy to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. Imagine a Maya architect squinting at the horizon at sunrise, muttering, "A little to the left? Nope, that's a solstice." Temples became giant cosmic calendars, where shadows and light played spectacular tricks on certain days of the year. On equinoxes, sunlight might crawl down a staircase like a golden serpent, while full moons bathed sacred plazas in silver light. This wasn't just for show. These alignments were crucial for timing festivals, planting crops, and impressing both the gods and the neighbors. To modernize its jaw-dropping precision, to the Maya, it was just good planning. After all, if you're going to spend decades building something, you might as well make sure it looks amazing under the right star. El Castillo at Chichén Itzá wasn't just a pyramid. It was a giant stone magic trick. Twice a year during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the staircase, creating the illusion of a giant serpent slithering toward the ground. And not just any serpent. This was Kukulkan, the feathered snake god, making his grand entrance like a celebrity on a cosmic red carpet. Imagine ancient crowds gathering at the plaza, holding their breath as the shadow slowly comes to life, and someone whispering, "Yep, the gods are definitely online today." It was part science, part spectacle, and part spiritual flex, showing that the Maya could not only build sky-high monuments, but also choreograph the sun itself. Even now, thousands of tourists show up with cameras ready, proving that a good light show never goes out of style, even if it's been running for over 1,000 years. Deep in the city of Palenque stands the Temple of the Inscriptions, a structure that's part monument, part mystery novel carved in stone. It's the final resting place of King Tikal the Great, but getting to his tomb isn't as simple as walking in and saying hello. Hidden staircases wind deep into the pyramid's heart, leading to a burial chamber decorated with intricate carvings and one jaw-dropping sarcophagus lid that has fueled conspiracy theories for decades. Yes, the one some say looks like an ancient astronaut piloting a spaceship. Sorry, historians. The temple walls are covered in glyphs detailing Tikal's reign, victories, and a dash of royal propaganda for good measure. For the Maya, this wasn't just a tomb, it was a statement. Here lies a king so important, we built a skyscraper just to bury him. Even today, visitors leave in awe, wondering whether they've just toured a royal mausoleum, a celestial observatory, or the set of the world's oldest sci-fi story. For the Maya, the Paktopak ball court was more than a sports arena. It was part Olympic stadium, part temple, and part high-stakes reality show. The rules? Simple. Keep a solid rubber ball in play using hips, elbows, and knees. No hands, no feet, and definitely no cheating. The twist? Depending on the occasion, winning might earn you glory, or a ticket to meet the gods via ritual sacrifice. Crowds packed the stone stands, cheering like it was the World Cup, while priests stood by to make sure the game's spiritual purpose wasn't forgotten. The courts themselves were architectural marvels, with tall, sloping walls designed to bounce the ball in unpredictable ways. Think ancient pinball, but with more sweating and chanting. Every match was a mix of athleticism, ritual, and political theater, where victories could symbolize cosmic balance and royal power. To the Maya, it wasn't just a game. It was a collision of sport, ceremony, and destiny, plus a great excuse to show off some fancy feathered headdresses. Feeding an entire civilization isn't easy, especially when you can't just pop over to the supermarket. The Maya mastered the art of water management with canals, reservoirs, and irrigation systems that would make a modern city planner nod in respect. Picture sprawling networks of hand-dug channels guiding rainwater to thirsty crops, and massive stone-lined reservoirs storing enough water to survive even the sassiest of droughts. Farmers worked in rhythm with the seasons, opening and closing wooden sluices like DJs controlling the flow at a party. Except instead of music, they were keeping corn, beans, and squash alive. In some cities, these systems were so advanced they could support tens of thousands of people year-round, even in dry seasons. And all this without pumps, pipes, or Wi-Fi controlled sprinklers, just clever engineering, teamwork, and a deep understanding of the land. It wasn't just infrastructure, it was a life support, ensuring the Maya could thrive whether the skies were generous or stingy with rain. Once bustling with markets, music, and political drama, cities like Tikal and Chichén now stand silent, their grand plazas echoing only with the calls of birds and the rustle of jungle leaves. Why did the Maya walk away from these magnificent cities? Historians have theories. Droughts that turned fertile land to dust, endless wars that drained resources, political collapses, or maybe the world's longest collective "we're moving out" decision. Imagine a Maya family packing up their prized pottery and maize seeds, muttering about how the neighbors have gotten weird and the waters run dry. In truth, the decline was likely a messy mix of climate change, overpopulation, and too many battles for too little food. The jungle, ever patient, crept back in, wrapping temples in green until they looked like nature's secret skyscrapers. Today, these abandoned cities feel both haunting and majestic, reminders that even the mightiest civilizations can leave behind ghost towns when the balance between people and the environment tips too far. From towering pyramids to intricate canals, the architecture of the Maya is proof that human creativity can defy the limits of tools and time. They built without metal, without wheels, without beasts of burden, yet their cities still stand, centuries after the last stone was set. It wasn't just about strength, it was about vision. Temples aligned with the stars, ball courts echoing with ritual purpose, and plazas designed to bring communities together. Every block carved, every wall raised was a conversation between human hands and the natural world, a balance between ambition and adaptation. The jungle may have tried to reclaim their work, but the Maya left structures so enduring, they still command awe today. It's a reminder that true greatness isn't just in building something big. It's in building something that lasts, inspires, and whispers across the ages. We were here, and we understood our place under the sky. From a distance, a Maya city could look like the perfect postcard. Towering temples glittering in the sun, markets buzzing with trade, plazas filled with music and color. But step a little closer, and you might hear the clang of obsidian blades, the war cries of warriors, and the not-so-distant smell of battle. This was the double life of the Maya, majestic civilization on one side, relentless conflict on the other. While priests offered incense to the gods atop the temples, soldiers marched below, preparing to take someone else's city or defend their own. War wasn't just a backdrop, it was woven into politics, religion, and even the economy. A festival could turn into a recruitment drive, and a diplomatic meeting might end with someone being taken hostage for future sacrifice. The Maya world was as much about beauty and brilliance as it was about blood and conquest, a constant reminder that even paradise can have a battlefield at its heart. In the Maya world, going to war wasn't just about land. It was about power, prestige, and sometimes party planning for the gods. Rival cities clashed over fertile fields, trade routes, and valuable resources like obsidian and jade. But there was another high-stakes prize: captives. Taking prisoners wasn't only a military win, it meant having VIP guests for future sacrificial ceremonies. Leaders often saw war as the fastest route to political dominance. Why negotiate when you could show up with an army and a dramatic feathered headdress? Even religious motivations played a part. Some battles were timed with celestial events to give the fight a divine stamp of approval. And so, disputes over water or farmland could quickly escalate into epic conflicts involving thousands of warriors, elaborate battle formations, and enough noise to make the jungle wildlife move out temporarily. For the Maya elite, war was a risky but tempting investment. Dangerous, costly, but oh so good for making a statement. If the Maya world had a most dramatic rivalry award, Tikal and Chichén would have won it every century. These two superpowers weren't just neighbors. They were frenemies locked in an endless tug of war for dominance. Imagine two chess grandmasters, but instead of pawns and knights, they had thousands of warriors, towering pyramids, and a side hustle in espionage. One year, Tikal might score a major victory and throw a victory feast that lasted for weeks. The next, Calakmul would strike back with an alliance of smaller cities, showing up uninvited at Tikal's doorstep, army in tow. Their rivalry spanned centuries, with battles so intense that even the jungle seemed to hold its breath. Sometimes they fought directly. Other times they waged proxy wars through their allies, turning the Maya lowlands into a political minefield. And just when peace talks seemed possible, someone would accidentally raid the other's trade route, and the whole feud would explode again. In the grand saga of the Maya, Tikal and Calakmul's rivalry was the never-ending soap opera everyone couldn't stop watching. Forget cannons and steel swords. Maya warfare was a masterclass in creativity with what they had. Warriors charged into battle wielding spears, atlatls, spear throwers, bows, and the fearsome macoahuitl, a wooden club lined with razor-sharp obsidian blades that could slice through flesh like a hot knife through tamale dough. Armor? No clunky metal plates here, just quilted cotton armor soaked in salt water, surprisingly tough and much lighter than anything a European knight wore. Archers rained arrows tipped with obsidian, while spear throwers sent projectiles flying farther than you'd think possible without gunpowder. Battles weren't just brute force, they were carefully choreographed with flanking maneuvers, ambushes from the jungle, and sometimes even psychological warfare. Think intimidating war paint and feathered headdresses that made you look 10 feet tall. It was part strategy, part theater, and part who has the flashiest outfit. When you saw a Maya army coming, you didn't just hear the war drums. You saw a moving wall of color, obsidian, and very determined faces. In the Maya world, weddings weren't just about love. They were strategic chess moves with flowers and fancy outfits. A royal marriage could turn two rival cities into best friends, at least until someone forgot to send a wedding gift or stole a sacred jade mask. Kings and queens used their children as living peace treaties, marrying them off to secure alliances, gain trade routes, or simply keep a nosy neighbor from attacking. The ceremonies were grand, with feasts, music, and enough feathers to make a parrot jealous. Behind the scenes, however, it was pure politics. Guest lists decided by power, seating arrangements by diplomacy, and wedding speeches that sounded suspiciously like military agreements. These unions could pause wars, but rarely forever. Once the honeymoon phase ended, old grudges tended to sneak back in. Still, for a civilization that fought as often as it farmed, marriage diplomacy was the closest thing to a ceasefire with cake. In the Maya military, ranks weren't just about who could swing a club the hardest, though that definitely helped. At the base were the common warriors, armed with spears, wooden clubs with obsidian blades, and enough courage to make up for their lack of armor. Above them were the veteran fighters, proudly wearing extra feathers to show they'd survived more than one battle. Then came the captains, experts in both strategy and exaggerated hand gestures when giving orders. Nobles served as high-ranking commanders, draped in jaguar pelts and painted for intimidation, giving commands with the flair of stage actors. At the very top sat the warlords and kings, who preferred to let others do the fighting while they perfected their heroic pose for murals. Climbing the ranks meant proving yourself in battle, making the right allies, and occasionally surviving long enough to enjoy the victory feast. Endless warfare was not exactly great for the Maya's grocery situation. With farmers drafted into the army and fields left untended, crops withered faster than a diplomat's smile after a bad trade deal. Supply lines were often cut off, meaning villages went from prosperous to scraping the bottom of the corn jar in record time. As food became scarce, so did patience. Hungry citizens aren't exactly the most loyal. Whispers of discontent grew louder than the war drums. Population numbers began to shrink, not just from casualties, but from people fleeing to safer, less stabby neighborhoods. Add in the constant demand for resources to feed the war machine, and you've got a society running on fumes. Even the nobles started to grumble, mainly because their feasts now featured fewer exotic fruits and more creative maize dishes. When everyone from peasants to princes is cranky, you know trouble's brewing, and not the good kind of brew. As if war wasn't enough, Mother Nature decided to roll up her sleeves and join the chaos. For decades, the Maya lands suffered from prolonged droughts that made every drop of water more valuable than gold. Rivers shrank into sad little puddles, and reservoirs turned into cracked bowls of dust. Farmers stared helplessly at their fields, where maize plants drooped like they'd just heard bad news. Without rain, harvest failed. And the already stressed food supply turned into a national crisis buffet. Except the buffet was empty. Tensions skyrocketed as communities fought over dwindling resources, and even the rain gods seemed to be ghosting their worshippers. Priests performed elaborate ceremonies to summon storms, but the skies stayed stubbornly blue as if on vacation. When you mix hunger, heat, and hopelessness, you don't get a recipe for peace. You get a boiling pot of unrest, ready to spill over at the slightest spark. By the 9th century, the great Maya cities were starting to look less like bustling hubs of culture and more like awkward high school reunions. Half the people missing, the rest pretending everything was fine. Trade routes broke down, alliances crumbled faster than stale tortillas, and once mighty kings found themselves ruling over ghost towns. Temples that once echoed with chants now stood in eerie silence, their steps gathering dust instead of pilgrims. Farmers abandoned fields gone barren from drought, while craftsmen packed up their tools and moved on in search of better prospects. Some cities simply emptied out, leaving behind only stone monuments and a whole lot of questions. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic collapse. It was a slow, centuries-long fade-out, like a party where guests keep quietly slipping away until you're left alone with warm drinks and awkward memories. By the end, the Maya world was a patchwork of deserted cities, scattered villages, and a legacy that refused to vanish completely. And so we arrive at the big question. What really brought the Maya low? Was it the endless wars or Mother Nature's particularly cruel sense of humor? On one side, you have centuries of political backstabbing, city-level grudges, and enough battles to make a soap opera jealous. On the other, decades of droughts that turned fertile fields into cracked clay, making corn scarcer than a polite Twitter debate. Maybe it was both. Imagine trying to fight your neighbor while your pantry is empty and your water jar has been dry for weeks. The truth is, history doesn't always hand us a neat single culprit. It's more like a messy breakup. Too many problems piled up, too much stress, and nobody willing to compromise. By the time the last stones of the great cities were left to the jungle, the Maya had already shifted into a new chapter. Smaller communities, different priorities, but the same resilience that kept their culture alive. The mystery still lingers, and maybe that's the point. The end of an empire isn't always the end of the story. Just because the great Maya cities crumbled doesn't mean the people packed up and vanished like the last guest at a bad party. No, they stuck around, because that's what the Maya do best: adapt. Imagine the grand plazas and towering temples giving way to smaller, more practical towns. Sure, the skyline lost some drama, but the people gained flexibility. Farmers kept farming, traders kept trading, and priests, well, they still had plenty of rituals, just with a smaller stage. The jungle might have swallowed the stone, but it couldn't eat the culture. In the post-classic period, the Maya weren't a ghost of their former selves. They were the same resilient folks, just dressed for a different era. They shifted centers of power, formed new alliances, and quietly prepared for whatever came next. Spoiler, it was Europeans, and it was complicated. The key takeaway? Civilizations don't disappear just because their monuments do. They change shape, change rhythm, and keep dancing to their own beat. Jaguar skins optional. After the fall of the old powerhouses, a new player stepped into the spotlight: Mayapan. Think of it as the scrappy reboot of the Maya political scene. Smaller budget, tighter script, but still plenty of drama. Instead of sprawling empires, power now revolved around a network of city-states, with Mayapan calling most of the shots. It was a bit like moving from a mega capital to a federation of strong-willed neighbors. Cooperation was necessary, but so were the occasional passive-aggressive feasts. Mayapan became the center of politics, trade, and diplomacy, pulling in surrounding regions like the ultimate regional influencer. Sure, alliances could be shaky, and leadership sometimes ended with more daggers than handshakes, but the Maya had learned to keep the game going without overextending. This shift in power wasn't just survival, it was a masterclass in political recycling. Take the best bits from the old system, patch over the parts that failed, and keep the cultural heart beating. The stage was set for new stories, and for new problems to inevitably walk through the door. With Mayapan running the political show, trade in the post-classic era went full throttle. The Maya weren't just swapping corn for beans anymore. They were shipping obsidian blades, salt, cacao, jade, cotton textiles, and gossip faster than a royal scandal. Trade routes stretched deep into Mesoamerica and out toward the Caribbean, turning coastal cities into bustling hubs of canoes loaded with goods. Picture fleets of sleek dugout canoes slicing through turquoise waters, captains shouting orders while paddlers tried not to hit the occasional curious sea turtle. In markets, merchants haggled with dramatic flair, tossing in extra shells to sweeten deals or raising eyebrows like professional poker players. This network wasn't just about stuff, it was about influence. Exotic feathers from distant lands ended up on Mayapan's elites, while Maya pottery found its way to far-off islands. The result? A vibrant, interconnected economy that made the Maya not only survivors of a political shakeup, but trendsetters of the trade world, proving that even after empires crumble, someone still needs to sell the cacao. As trade brought in new ideas, Maya art and architecture took on a whole new vibe. Gone were the days of endlessly ornate carvings that made stonemasons cry. Now designs were cleaner, faster to build, and sprinkled with outside influences. Think of it as the Maya version of minimalism, but with a tropical twist. Mayapan's walls sported simpler murals, sometimes borrowing motifs from central Mexico, while temple layouts started blending local tradition with imported styles. Even pottery got a makeover, geometric patterns, brighter colors, and the occasional depiction of warriors who looked suspiciously like they were from somewhere else. Sculptors still told stories in stone, but now they might include a few foreign gods alongside the homegrown deities. Because why not mix your pantheon like a cocktail? It wasn't a decline in creativity, but an evolution. By blending styles, the Maya created a cultural remix that reflected their connections across Mesoamerica. Sure, the old elites might have scoffed at the new look, but the result was an adaptable, vibrant aesthetic that proved the Maya could keep up with changing times, while still leaving plenty of room for a dramatic temple staircase. Before the conquistadors arrived with their shiny armor and questionable manners, the Maya had a very different European encounter: shipwreck survivors. Imagine it, Spanish sailors washing ashore, sunburned, half-starved, and desperately trying to mine food and water to bemused Maya fishermen. Some were welcomed, fed, and even integrated into local communities. Others were treated with caution because, well, strangers falling from the sea is never a regular Tuesday. Over time, a few of these castaways learned the language, married into Maya families, and swapped their boots for sandals. Stories spread of bearded men helping in the fields, or awkwardly joining in ceremonial dances while trying not to trip over their tunics. For the Maya, it was like getting a sneak preview of what was coming, only without realizing the full plot twist. These early encounters were a curious blend of hospitality, curiosity, and mild confusion, setting the stage for a much bigger and far more chaotic cultural collision just a few decades later. If the shipwrecked Spaniards were the sneak preview, then Hernán Cortés and Pedro de Alvarado were the full action-packed blockbuster, and not the kind you want tickets for. When they arrived, they brought more than swords and shiny helmets. They came with war tactics, political manipulation, and an unwanted bonus feature: smallpox. At first, some Maya leaders tried diplomacy, thinking, maybe we can work this out. But soon, battles erupted, villages burned, and alliances crumbled faster than a stale tortilla. The Spanish cavalry, unfamiliar and terrifying to the Maya, stormed through like a nightmare on horseback. Disease spread even faster than the soldiers, leaving communities weakened before they could even fight. Within a shockingly short time, many powerful Maya centers fell, their temples abandoned or taken over by foreign rulers. It wasn't just a military defeat, it was a cultural earthquake. And while some survivors retreated deep into the forest to resist, the world they had known was irreversibly changed, replaced by a new order that no one had truly invited. If the conquest was a storm, the aftermath was a controlled demolition. Only the demolition crew had shiny helmets and a cross. Spanish friars and officials got to work like overly zealous librarians with a vendetta, priceless Maya codices, straight into the fire. Temples that had stood for centuries, knocked down or repurposed into churches, traditional rituals, banned faster than you can say check. For the Maya, it was like someone hitting the delete button on their cultural hard drive. Elders whispered sacred stories in secret, while others hid idols behind Catholic saints, blending old beliefs with the new under the watchful eyes of the colonizers. The loss was more than physical. It was an attempt to erase identity itself. And yet in quiet corners of villages, the heartbeat of Maya tradition still thumped, muted but defiant, waiting for the day it could be heard again. When the Spanish banned Maya rituals, the Maya didn't just give up. They got creative. Festivals once dedicated to rain gods now featured saints with suspiciously similar backstories. Old temples became church courtyards, where hymns echoed over stones that had once heard chants to Chak and Itzamna. In some villages, the same drum beat accompanied both Catholic processions and ancient dances, like a cultural remix centuries before DJs existed. The blend wasn't always peaceful. Spanish priests grumbled about pagan habits slipping into Sunday Mass, while Maya elders smirked, knowing their traditions were still alive, just wearing a different outfit. It was a game of disguise and adaptation, where a carved idol might be tucked behind a crucifix, and a prayer to the Virgin Mary might secretly double as a plea to the old maize goddess. Outwardly, the culture had changed, but beneath the new surface, the heart of the Maya world kept beating, patient and stubborn as ever. Centuries after the Spanish conquest, the Maya still had a rebellious streak that refused to quit. Enter the caste war of the 19th century, a decades-long "you thought we were done" moment. It started with land disputes, taxes that felt more like ransom, and a deep dislike for being treated as second-class citizens in their own homeland. Villages rose up, armed with muskets, machetes, and an unshakable determination to make the Spanish and their descendants regret underestimating them. The rebels even retook entire towns, sending government troops scrambling. At one point, the conflict reached a standoff so tense that peace talks felt like awkward family dinners where nobody wanted to be there. The war dragged on for over 50 years, blending battles, truces, and sudden flare-ups, proving that the Maya spirit was more stubborn than a donkey on strike. In the end, political deals and shifting alliances cooled the fighting, but the message was clear. The Maya could bend, adapt, and even blend cultures, but they would never fully bow. Today, the Maya are no longer ruling vast kingdoms or waging epic wars, but they're far from gone. They've traded obsidian blades for smartphones, stone temples for concrete houses, and long-distance messengers for instant messaging. In towns and cities across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and beyond, millions still speak Maya languages, wear traditional embroidered clothing, and celebrate festivals that mix ancient rituals with modern flair. Picture a wedding where the bride wears a hand-woven hupel while the DJ plays reggaeton. Heritage meets party mode. Farmers still grow maize the traditional way, while young Maya entrepreneurs sell handmade crafts online to customers halfway across the world. The ancient gods might not get as many offerings these days, but the spirit of resilience lives on in community pride, cultural revival, and a refusal to be erased from history. The Maya haven't disappeared. They've just updated their software, keeping the old features but running on a brand new system. The chapter opens in a whirlwind of color, sound, and the delicious smell of street food at a festival in Guatemala. Descendants of the Maya filled the plaza, wearing traditional hand-woven huipils, so vibrant they could make a rainbow feel underdressed. Everywhere you look, there are bright reds, deep blues, and intricate patterns telling stories of gods, maize, and heroic ancestors. Basically, wearable history textbooks. Musicians pound marimbas while dancers whirl in circles, their skirts flaring like bursts of fireworks. Kids run between market stalls, half chasing balloons, half sneaking bites of tamales. Elders sit proudly in embroidered tunics, watching the next generation celebrate traditions they've kept alive for centuries. Tourists try to blend in, but end up looking like walking selfies. It's not just a party, it's a living, breathing declaration that the Maya are still here, still proud, and still the masters of mixing ancient spirit with modern fun. Beyond the festival's bright chaos, the Maya story stretches far and wide, over 6 million people strong. Picture it, mountain villages nestled in the Guatemalan highlands, where clouds drift lazily over terraced cornfields, and lowland towns in Mexico's Yucatan, where palm trees sway like they're on vacation. The Maya live in a patchwork of landscapes, some bustling city neighborhoods where hupils share the streets with neon signs, others remote communities where the nearest supermarket is a donkey ride away. In Belize and Honduras, fishing boats painted in bright colors dot the coast, while in rural Chiapas, you might hear a smartphone notification and a rooster crow in the same breath. Despite the distance between them, these communities are tied by heritage, language, and a stubborn refusal to let their culture fade. It's geography meets anthropology, with a dash of stubborn pride. If you thought the Maya language was a dusty relic locked away in a museum, think again. It's alive, kicking, and chatting away in more than 30 different tongues. From Quiche in the Guatemalan highlands to Yucatec in Mexico's sun-baked lowlands, these languages aren't just words. They're time capsules, carrying centuries of history, jokes, and probably some very creative insults. In many villages, children still learn their mother tongue at home, then take it to school where teachers weave it into lessons alongside Spanish. There are even radio stations and YouTube channels broadcasting entirely in Maya languages, proof that you can keep tradition alive and still go viral. Linguists, elders, and cultural activists work tirelessly to document, teach, and preserve these languages, sometimes with the help of smartphone apps. The result? A vibrant polyphonic chorus that refuses to fade, reminding the world that the Maya voice is as strong as ever. If clothing could talk, the Maya huipil would be the world's most stylish history book. These hand-woven blouses, each taking weeks or even months to create, are embroidered with patterns that tell stories of gods, battles, seasons, and even a bit of village gossip if you look closely. In some towns, a single glance at the color palette and stitching style can reveal exactly where the wearer is from. Think of it as a fashionable GPS. The designs aren't random. They're coated with centuries of symbolism, from jaguars representing strength to maize plants symbolizing life. Even today, women proudly wear hupilis during festivals, market days, or just a casual stroll to the tortilla shop, turning the streets into living runways of culture. While modern clothing has crept into everyday life, the huipil remains a proud declaration of identity, resilience, and, let's be honest, serious embroidery skills that could put luxury fashion brands to shame. Fresh off our fashion runway of huipilis, we step into the big milestones, weddings, births, and farewells, where tradition and Christianity dance a surprisingly elegant two-step. At a village wedding, church bells duet with marimbas. The couple kneels before a cross and a basket of maize, exchanging woven belts as elders waft copal incense. The priest blesses them, an aunt tosses petals, and a grandmother whispers the real vows. Share tortillas equally and never hide the good cacao. When new life arrives, a comadrona, midwife, presides like a calm general. She murmurs prayers to saints and, under her breath, to Ixchel, ties a red protection cord on the baby's wrist and brews comforting atole for the exhausted parents. The child gets a bilingual name, perfect for chatting with both grandma and the internet. In times of goodbye, candles and marigolds line a pine needle path. Hymns rise in Quiche and Spanish, while relatives place food and flowers, because love is a care package, even across worlds. For 9 nights, stories, prayers, and softly steaming tamales keep vigil. Through all of it runs a single thread, cross and copal, Bible and milpa, modern life wrapped gently in ceremonies that have outlasted empires. After vows, births, and farewells, there's one ritual everyone agrees on: eating. The Maya table is where tradition high-fives appetite. At the center sits maize, the VIP of the pantry, patted into tortillas on a hot camal, tucked into leaf-wrapped tamales, or sipped as comforting a tone that tastes like a hug in a cup. Cacao shows up dressed to impress, whisked into a foamy drink that once fueled nobles and now powers aunties through market day. Around them swirl relishes and ricottados, aromatic spice pastes that could convince even a shy vegetable to speak up. Fusion? Oh yes. Spanish pigs met Maya annatto and lime and invented cochinita pibil, pork marinated sunset red, slow cooked in an earth oven, then served like a mic drop. In Guatemala, pepián simmers thick with toasted seeds and chilies, the culinary equivalent of a weighted blanket. There's sical pak, a pumpkin seed dip that disappears faster than family gossip. Chaya greens that pretend to be spinach but sassier, and chilies with personalities. Plates clatter, molinillos froth, and someone inevitably says, "Take more," as if refusal were a crime. From street stalls to fiesta banquets, the menu reads like history you can chew. Old gods in the seasoning, new influences on the grill, and zero leftovers of cultural pride. After all that glorious eating, there's only one logical next step. Say thanks to the sky. In today's Maya communities, faith is a duet. Old melodies with a new chorus. For rain, families gather at the milpa, where a green-painted cross, hello, Seba symbolism, rises over young corn. An elder daykeeper counts sacred days, sprinkles ground maize, and feeds a copal fire while a priest offers a blessing. Somewhere a kid croaks like a frog because grandma swears it helps Chak pay attention. During harvest, saints process through town on flower-laden platforms, followed by marimba beats, candles, and baskets of squash and cacao, basically a farmer's market with holy water. Altars appear in surprising places. A church courtyard built on ancient stones, a cave mouth that breathes cool air, even a cenote rim where offerings of petals and prayers slide into the blue. It's not a theological wrestling match so much as tag team gratitude. Crosses and corn, rosaries and smoke, hymns in Spanish answering chants in Quichua. Apps are fine for weather, but here the forecast still starts with community, ceremony, and a hopeful glance at those building clouds. If the heavens deliver, the first tortillas off the camal are for the spirits, and then, mercifully, for everyone else. In today's Maya communities, the economy is a colorful mix of ancient skills and modern hustle. Picture a grandmother weaving intricate hoopolis on a wooden loom, while her grandson live streams the process to tourists on social media, both earning tips in the process. Tourism is a big deal, from guided tours through jungle ruins to bustling markets selling hand-woven textiles, jade jewelry, and chocolate made from traditional cacao recipes. Agriculture still plays a key role, with fields of corn, beans, and squash stretching across the highlands, but now some farmers also grow coffee for export. And then there's the artisans, carving mass, painting pottery, and creating intricate beadwork that could easily rival luxury fashion. Many families balance multiple income streams, blending tradition with entrepreneurship. It's not just about survival, it's about pride, identity, and keeping Maya culture alive while paying the bills. So whether it's a farmer negotiating a coffee deal over WhatsApp or a craftswoman selling on Etsy, the Maya have proven they can adapt their heritage into a thriving 21st century economy. For all the vibrant colors and cultural pride, the modern Maya still face some serious plot twists. Poverty remains a stubborn guest that refuses to leave. Many families live on modest incomes from farming or crafts, and opportunities can be scarce. Inequality adds to the mix, especially in education and healthcare, where rural Maya communities often get the short end of the stick. And then there's the silent thief of time, cultural erosion. As younger generations move to cities or spend more time scrolling on their phones than listening to grandparents' stories, traditions risk fading into the background noise of the modern world. Imagine a teen trading a weaving lesson for a TikTok dance tutorial. It's progress, but also a cultural cliffhanger. Activists and community leaders fight back with schools teaching indigenous languages, festivals celebrating ancient customs, and cooperatives supporting artisans. The challenge is real, but so is the resilience. Just like their ancestors weathered droughts and invaders, today's Maya are determined to keep their heritage not just alive, but kicking. So here we are, wrapping up our journey through the lives of the modern Maya. Despite poverty, inequality, and the tug-of-war with modern distractions, their culture hasn't just survived. It's throwing a fiesta in the face of time. Language classes keep ancient words alive. Grandmothers pass down weaving patterns like secret family codes. And festivals transform dusty town squares into explosions of color and music. In bustling markets, hand-woven textiles hang next to smartphone chargers, proving tradition and modern life can share the same stall. From cornfields to classrooms, from sacred altars to social media pages, the Maya spirit adapts without losing its spark. It's like their ancestors handed them not just history, but a cultural torch. And instead of placing it in a museum, they're running with it. The world keeps spinning, trends keep changing, but the fire of Maya identity burns brightly, lighting the path for generations to come. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real prophecy worth remembering. The chapter opens with the kind of travel moment that makes Instagram jealous. A group of tourists standing in awe before the towering pyramid of Chichén Itzá. Sunlight spills across the ancient stone steps, and you can almost hear the whispers of history, or maybe that's just the tour guide with a megaphone. Cameras click, phones rise, and someone inevitably tries to take a selfie at an awkward angle that makes the pyramid look like a tiny hat. But beyond the photo ops, there's a palpable sense of wonder. These stones have stood for over 1,000 years, weathering storms, empires, and an endless stream of curious humans. Standing here, you're not just looking at architecture. You're staring at the persistence of human creativity, the ultimate "we were here" carved into the earth. It's the perfect stage setter for celebrating the Maya legacy, a civilization whose monuments are as much about precision engineering as they are about awe-inspiring beauty. And yes, you can almost hear the pyramid smirking, "Still standing, folks." If Chichén Itzá is the headline act, then the rest of the Maya archaeological treasures are the deep cuts on the album. Equally brilliant, but you have to dig for them, sometimes literally. Every temple, stela, and carved obsidian blade is a puzzle piece in the sprawling saga of the Maya. Archaeologists treat these finds like gold, except gold doesn't usually require hours of careful brushing under the blazing sun while avoiding scorpions. Imagine unearthing a pot that hasn't seen daylight in 1,000 years and realizing it's decorated with scenes of ancient nobles, or possibly just a really elaborate party. Each artifact whispers a clue, how they lived, what they valued, and sometimes what they argued about. Put together, it's less like reading a history book and more like binge-watching a very long, very slow, but extremely rewarding TV series, complete with cliffhangers carved in stone. And just like that, the value of these discoveries isn't just academic. It's a time machine built from stone, clay, and pure curiosity. The Maya weren't just master builders. They were science nerds long before it was cool. Their calendar system could predict solar eclipses with spooky precision, making medieval European astrologers look like they were just guessing based on goat behavior. Their mathematics? Top-notch. They not only invented the concept of zero, yes, zero, but used it with a base 20 system that made their astronomical calculations razor sharp. And astronomy itself? Imagine priests in elaborate feathered headdresses mapping the movements of Venus. Because in Maya science, planetary alignments weren't just pretty, they dictated planting seasons, war decisions, and party dates. Their observatories, like the famous El Caracol in Chichén Itzá, weren't for stargazing romance. They were ancient data centers, turning the sky into spreadsheets long before Excel. Even today, scientists and historians still scratch their heads at how they nailed such precise results without telescopes, computers, or Wi-Fi. It's a legacy proving that genius doesn't need modern gadgets, just sharp eyes, sharper minds, and maybe a few centuries of trial and error. Maya culture didn't just stay locked in the jungle. It packed its bags and went on a continental road trip. From Mexico to the far reaches of South America, their influence can still be spotted in architecture, art, and festivals. Think of colorful markets filled with textiles sporting geometric patterns straight out of ancient temples, or dancers in feathered costumes spinning to rhythms that echo ceremonies from 1,000 years ago. Even modern buildings borrow from Maya style. Those sharp angles and pyramid-like steps sneak into everything from museums to hotels. Traditional rituals like offerings to the gods of corn and rain still take place in some communities, often blended with Catholic elements in a fascinating cultural remix. It's like the Maya left their cultural Spotify playlist on shuffle, and the whole region still dances to it. Whether in a carved wooden mask, a woven huipil, or the layout of a town plaza, traces of the Maya remind us that their legacy isn't just in dusty ruins. It's alive, loud, and still throwing the best cultural parties in the Americas. The Maya may have vanished as a political power, but in pop culture, they're still starring in box office hits, binge-worthy TV shows, and jaw-dropping video games. One moment, you're exploring a pixel-perfect version of Tikal in an action-adventure game. The next, you're watching a Hollywood blockbuster where ancient glyphs somehow unlock a doomsday device. Novels borrow their legends to craft epic fantasy worlds, while documentaries, hi, that's us, keep the scholarly side alive. Even fashion gets in on the act, with runway models strutting in outfits inspired by Maya patterns, though the ancient kings probably didn't expect their royal motifs to end up on crop tops. Their temples have been backdrops for everything from epic love stories to alien invasion theories, proving that Maya mystique sells as well as popcorn. And let's be honest, whenever a director needs a mysterious, beautiful ruin, the Maya are on speed dial. From the silver screen to the console, they've gone global without ever leaving the jungle. When UNESCO stamps something as a World Heritage Site, it's like giving it a VIP pass to human history, and the Maya have a whole stack of them. Chichén Itzá? Check. Tikal? Absolutely. Palenque? Of course. These aren't just ruins. They're red carpet celebrities of archaeology. Picture inspectors in wide-brim hats, clipboards in hand, debating whether a 1,000-year-old temple is iconic enough. Spoiler, it always is. The designation means more than bragging rights. It brings funding, international attention, and yes, a steady stream of selfie sticks. Thanks to UNESCO, many Maya sites have been preserved, restored, and protected from looters, erosion, and the occasional over-enthusiastic treasure hunter with a metal detector. It's a global nod saying, hey, this matters. Don't let it crumble. And while the ancient builders never dreamed of a UN stamp of approval, their work now sits proudly alongside the pyramids of Giza and the Great Wall of China in humanity's greatest hits album. Preserving Maya heritage isn't just about dusting off a pyramid once in a while. It's a full-time international group project. Picture archaeologists from Mexico, Guatemala, and beyond, teaming up with scientists, engineers, and even drone pilots to keep these ancient wonders standing. One team painstakingly reassembles a collapsed temple wall like a 1,000-piece stone jigsaw puzzle, while another scans glyphs with lasers to capture every millimeter before erosion claims them. Funding comes from governments, NGOs, and the occasional billionaire who wants their name on a plaque. Of course, not everything goes smoothly. Rainforest humidity, invasive tree roots, and curious monkeys have their own renovation ideas. But through training programs, community involvement, and high-tech gadgetry, these projects give Maya monuments a second life. It's not just about saving stones, it's about keeping the stories, the artistry, and the genius of the Maya alive for future generations who might otherwise only meet them in video games. If the Maya could send us one group text from the past, it would probably say, manage your resources or else. Their history is packed with lessons about sustainability. Some learned the hard way. Over-farming leads to soil exhaustion, ignoring water management, cue catastrophic droughts. But when they got it right, the Maya were masters, building reservoirs, rotating crops, and living in sync with the seasons. Fast forward to today, and climate change feels like the ultimate pop quiz on those same skills. We're now the students, and the Maya are the teachers whose lectures are carved in stone, literally. Imagine a modern city mayor getting advice from a time-traveling Maya engineer. Don't build houses where the river floods every year. Common sense, yet somehow revolutionary. Their story is a reminder that survival isn't about brute force, it's about adaptability. Whether it's planting the right crops or knowing when to move, the Maya legacy whispers, the earth always has the final word, so listen closely before she yells. For the descendants of the Maya, pride isn't just a feeling, it's a lifestyle. From bustling markets selling hand-woven textiles in riotous colors to festivals where ancient dances meet modern beats, their culture is alive, loud, and gloriously unapologetic. Language classes teach kids not just Spanish or English, but the lyrical tones of Mayan tongues. Grandparents tell stories under starry skies, reminding everyone that their history isn't locked in museum glass. It's walking, breathing, and laughing in the streets. And while tourists snap selfies at ruins, local artisans quietly weave the same patterns their ancestors did, as if to say, we were here before hashtags. Whether it's in the taste of traditional tamales or the intricate steps of a centuries-old dance, the Maya spirit refuses to fade. This isn't nostalgia, it's a declaration. Identity isn't something you archive, it's something you live every single day. And if you ask them, they'll tell you with a smile, the Maya didn't just survive, they've been here all along, hiding in plain sight, wearing the brightest clothes in the room. And so, our journey through the jungles, pyramids, and centuries comes to an end. Not with a dusty history book closing, but with a wink from the past. The Maya civilization may have faded as a political power, but their legacy is anything but gone. It's carved in stone, whispered in languages still spoken, and danced in festivals that refuse to be forgotten. From the genius of their calendars to the bold colors of their textiles, every detail shouts, we mattered, we matter, and we will matter. Today, their story lives on in classrooms, museums, and even TikTok feeds where teens show off their hand-woven belts. The ruins still stand proud, like stone storytellers waiting for the next visitor to listen. And maybe that's the real magic. Time couldn't erase them. They bent but never broke. So as we step away from this adventure, remember, civilizations may rise and fall, but true heritage, that's immortal. And somewhere under the shade of a ceiba tree, the Maya spirit is still smiling, saying, told you we'd last forever.